Hi there. I've been going through Rutger Bregman's Humankind for a few weeks now, and I've almost come to the end of the book. I started reading Bregman after going through an interview which came in the Hindu, the Sunday supplement of the Hindu, a few weeks ago. Usually we believe that to be critical you need to be cynical. But Bregman tries to argue otherwise. And that is exactly the point which made me want to buy Humankind and go through it. He argues right from the very beginning till the end of the book by subverting many of those experiments which we often rely upon to prove that man is innately evil. And he vouches for the trust in humankind, that particular element in humankind which has helped to thrive on for centuries together, that particular element of trust and friendship which is there embedded in humanity for such a long time, that is exactly what makes the species move on. I guess this is a book which is something which can be recommended, especially during these trying times when the globe is affected by COVID-19. Because basically we have lost trust in each other. We have lost our confidence to move forward, and I guess Humankind will help us to be kind to ourselves and to others. Now, all that said, I came across a very interesting chapter in Humankind last day, which is titled Homo ludens. I completed the chapter today. Sitting inside a classroom, I felt that I should share this with you. I know that there is a whole lot of debate happening outside regarding Bregman's concepts, but I am not sure how much of a debate has this particular element entered into, and I would definitely like to open your eyes to one of those particular theories or ideas or concept which Bregman is trying to espouse in the chapter Homo ludens. I was not familiar with this particular term, and then later I came to know that in 1938 a book came out by a Dutch historian titled Homo ludens, and his name was Johan Hussey. Now, in that particular book, from what I read and what I could understand very briefly, was that he discusses the importance of playing in society. As we all know, society is bound by rules. And then play is something which we often keep outside the social parameters. But Homo ludens talked about the importance of play. And this is exactly what Rutger Bregman has actually borrowed in his chapter Homo ludens. Before reading out from Bregman, I would like to quote a few lines from Gabriel Ochora's Once Upon a Time. Just a couple of lines. I know that you're all familiar with Ochora's Once Upon a Time. He says, "Teach me, son, how I used to love, when once upon a time I was like you." So laughter is something which we have forgotten all. We used to laugh a lot when we were children. And then again Agora says, that is something which we always used to do. When we made friends, we made without reservations. There was very less prejudice and bias when we made friends, and we shook hands with our hearts. All that I have forgotten, dear son, and I have to unlearn everything. That is how the book ends. And I need to relearn how I used to laugh, how I used to make friends, how I was so honest and truthful when it came to relationships. It all happened as I matured, and as I became a man, I forgot how I used to be so humble, how I used to be so open to humanity in general once upon a time. This is exactly where Bregman places his argument. He says, if humankind has to build its capacity on trust, then basically we have to go back to our childhood. And we need to bring up our children in such a manner that they learn the basic element of trusting one another, of believing in themselves, of being, aware of their capabilities and skills, instead of the adult world always trying to teach them as to how they should behave, as to how they should communicate, as to how they should grow up in the adult world. And Bregman says, introducing play in culture and society will definitely help to reduce depression, and it will always help to augment creativity. A society which is creative is the best society and culture to live in, and that is true. Now let me just read out a few passages from Bregman. Play is not subject to fixed rules and regulations, but is open-ended and unfettered. It is not an astroturfed field with parents shouting at the sidelines. It's kids frolicking outside without parental supervision, making up their own games as they go along. When kids engage in this kind of play, they think for themselves. They take risks and color outside the lines, and in the process train their minds and motivation. Unstructured play is also nature's remedy against boredom. The question is, if everything becomes prefabricated, can we still cultivate our own curiosity and powers of imagination? Now this is quite fundamental, because usually we buy prefabricated or pre-manufactured entertainment for our kids these days, and we help him or her to understand the way in which you should make that piece of toy work. That is all manufactured, that is all structured. The child doesn't get any creative power to be executed in the play of that particular toy. And if at all the child tries to dismantle the toy, we would say, no, you're not supposed to do it. It's worth $100, you're not supposed to break it. You're not supposed to take it apart. The child is just trying to play out his or her creativity, but we won't let him or her do it. Because we prefer to live in a manufactured, pre-structured world. And we expect that our children also play along with the pre-structured world we want them to grow in. Boredom may be the wellspring of creativity. You can't teach creativity, right, psychologist Peter Gray? All you can do is let it blossom. By playing together, children learn to cooperate. Hunter-gatherer kids almost always play in mixed groups, with boys and girls in all ages together. Little kids learn from big kids, who feel a responsibility to pass on what they know. Not surprisingly, competitive games are virtually unheard of in these societies. Unlike adult tournaments, unstructured play continually requires participants to make compromises. And if anyone is unhappy, they can always stop. The culture of play underwent a radical change when humans started settling down in one place. For children, the dawn of civilization brought the yoke of mind-numbing farm labor, as well as the idea that children required raising, much like one might raise tomatoes. Because if children were born wicked, then you couldn't leave them to their own devices. They first needed to acquire that veneer of civilization, and often this called for a firm hand. The notion that parents should ever strike a child originated only recently among our agrarian and city-dwelling ancestors. A few more paragraphs. The question is not, can our kids handle the freedom? The question is, do we have the courage to give it to them? It is an urgent question. The opposite of play is not work. The psychologist Brian Smith once said, the opposite of play is depression. These days, the way many of us work, with no freedom, no play, no intrinsic motivation, is fueling an epidemic of depression. According to the World Health Organization, depression is now the #1 global disease. Our biggest shortfall isn't in a bank account or budget sheet, but inside ourselves. It's a shortage of what makes life meaningful. A shortage of play. Being a teacher and being a mother, I could not help but reread Rutger Bregman and find how important play is.